From the Nintendo DS to the PS3, here are some of the games that I've been playing recently. Welcome back to another episode of Backlog Journal.
Guys, I have an extra ticket to the concert tonight.
Take me, dude. Take me.
Oh, choices, right? In Dragon Quest IX, I had to choose between a martial artist and a warrior to take into battle with me. I chose a warrior. Who will you choose?
Back at the start of the year, I picked up my old Dragon Quest IX save file. I started this game back in 2018 when I first got my DS flash cart, and thankfully everything was exactly how I left it. I was a bit worried that I would have a difficult time jumping back into the middle of this game's lengthy campaign, but thanks to the almost episodic nature of this game's story, I had no trouble picking up where I left off. Dragon Quest IX is another solid entry in the long-running Dragon Quest franchise, and I'm so glad that I was finally able to sit down and see it through to the end. Despite this being one of those JRPGs where your party are just a bunch of blank slates that you create in a character creator that have none of their own dialogue, the game never felt like it was lacking personality or entertaining dialogue due to the memorable locations and cast of unique characters that you meet throughout the game. Each town that you visit has a unique theme and some sort of problem to solve. This led to the majority of the game feeling like an episodic fantasy cartoon with a general overarching plot connecting the pieces, and I absolutely loved it. It was also super refreshing to play a Dragon Quest game with a job class system. I know this isn't the only Dragon Quest game where you can customize your characters to that degree, but it's the first one that I've played through. When I finally reached the game's final dungeon, I decided to transfer my save file to my modded 3DS using Twilight Menu to see if I could access the game's Wi-Fi features, since wireless functions aren't actually possible with the old flash cart that I was using. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the online features working, but it's a good thing that I transferred my save over when I did, because only a couple of weeks later, my flash cart died and corrupted my SD card, which meant that everything on there was completely lost. Even though the Wi-Fi features didn't work out, I was still able to play around with cheats to get myself some rare weapons and armor, so that was fun to mess around with. Anyway, I really hope they remake this game one day so everyone can get the full Dragon Quest IX experience. But until then, the original is still worth playing any way you can, even if you can't access the online features. I am a huge fan of the original Dragon Quest monsters on the Game Boy Color. There's just something about its simple yet fun dungeon crawling that is therapeutic to me. Funnily enough, I never really played any other games in the series past the first one though, so I decided to finally rectify that with the recently released Dragon Quest Monsters 3. For those who don't know, the Dragon Quest Monsters games are a monster collecting spin-off of the mainline Dragon Quest series. It's easy to draw comparisons to Pokemon when talking about any game that centers around collecting monsters. However, I find Dragon Quest Monsters to really feel like more of its own thing due to its very different structure and other features, like how in order to build a strong team, you really need to take advantage of the fusion system. As fun as it is to recruit monsters in the overworld, nothing compares to the excitement of finding out that you can create something you haven't seen before just by using monsters that you've already captured. The game is broken up into several mini open worlds, each with a very distinct theme, my favorite of which being this kingdom where everything is made out of sweets. On top of that, you've also got the seasons changing roughly every 10 or 15 minutes, leading to not only some fun visual variety within levels, but also new areas opening up and different monsters appearing depending on the weather. And the monster designs in this game are just so good. There's a healthy balance of returning Dragon Quest icons and completely new monsters, and these designs are just incredible. Man, I wish slimes were real. If you've been on the fence about this game, this is me telling you to go out and get yourself a copy. I haven't completed this one yet, but I know I'm getting close. It's just been that JRPG that I've been slowly chipping away at for the last month or so. Oh, and the first couple of games in this video being Dragon Quest may or may not have something to do with the fact that I went to Dragon Quest Island back in February. I'm hoping to make that trip into a full video soon, but yeah, it was a lot of fun, and the park was decked out with lots of promo art for Dragon Quest Monsters 3 since that game just came out in December. I'm hoping to get it done soon, but honestly, I'm just missing Japan so much right now that looking back at the footage just kind of makes me sad. Anyway, when I was in Japan, I found this really cool ice blue PSP, so I went ahead and modded it, which was really easy to do, and installed a bunch of games that I would like to get to eventually, and for whatever reason, the first game that I settled on playing was Motorstorm Artic Edge. Now, I've never played a Motorstorm game before, but after spending almost 2 months playing nothing but Dragon Quest, I just wanted a simple game where I could go fast, and Sonic Rivals was just not cutting it. I found this entry to be particularly appealing because the whole game centers around winter, and snow levels in games have always been my favorite. The game has a campaign mode where you complete missions using a variety of vehicles. Each one feels different, and I really love how weighty and realistic the physics are compared to something like Mario Kart. The whole game has this kind of cool punk rock aesthetic in its music and menus, and it's exactly the type of change of pace that I was looking for after my long Dragon Quest binge. I'm also just really enjoying my time with the PSP as a console, and I can't wait to finally get around to more games that I put on here. Penny's Big Breakaway. Oh man, this is definitely a Game of the Year contender, and it's also the only game that I've played that's actually released this year so far, but honestly, even if that wasn't the case, that wouldn't change anything. This game is so good. I remember when I saw the first trailer of this game in a Nintendo Direct, I just knew that I was gonna love it. This is a brand new 3D platformer from a studio called Evening Star. This is their first game, but apparently the team is composed of a lot of people who worked on Sonic Mania, and it shows. Penny feels like a Sonic character. The way you swing around with your yo-yo, building momentum, and then rolling down slopes to go even faster, it's just so much fun. I was initially kind of overwhelmed by all of the moves that Penny has, but after the first few levels, I was getting the hang of things, and now her moveset feels about as natural to me as Mario's. But not only is the gameplay amazing, the music and visuals here are just so perfect. The overall vibe kind of reminds me of Nights into Dreams on the Sega Saturn, especially since most of the human characters in Penny's Big Breakaway all kind of have that medieval jester motif going on. And since these people developed a Sonic game and are probably all Sonic fans, it would make sense that they took a lot of inspiration from another beloved Sega franchise. This game gets a big fat 10 out of 10 from me, and you should definitely play it any way you can. Don't even wait for it to go on sale. I want the studio to make as much money as possible. They really deserve it, and I just want to see what they're gonna make next. They're great. I love them. Recently, I've been collecting a lot of PS3 games that I missed out on back in the day because a lot of them are honestly still relatively cheap, and I want to own them before that changes. Back during the peak PS3 era, I was a Nintendo fanboy, so the only new releases I was picking up were for my Wii and DS. Recently, I've been wanting to go back and experience a lot of the games that I missed out on from the PS3 and Xbox 360, from the popular ones to the lesser-known cult classics. So, I started with Insomniac's debut into the world of brown, mid-2000s FPS games, Resistance. Resistance is exactly the type of game that I had absolutely no interest in back when it was fresh off the shelves. But these days, I have this morbid curiosity to go back and play all of these angry bald man PS360 era games. Is it because I'm bald now? Have I become him? Or maybe the bald PS3 man has been inside of me all along. Well, either way, Rogaine, Resistance is exactly what you'd expect from a bald man first-person shooter from the 2006. I meant to say from 2006, but I'm not re-recording that. But honestly, that isn't a bad thing. It's a very straightforward level-to-level shooter where you fight these alien things from Russia, occasionally drive a car or a mech, and die a lot. Well, at least I did, because I'm not really good at these types of games, but I got better, and I actually ended up beating this one. And man, those last few levels were tough. I actually almost gave up on the second to last level, but I'm glad I didn't. It felt good overcoming the challenge, you know? I had a lot of fun playing through Resistance. Yeah, it might be a little too straightforward for some people, and yeah, your bullets had this weird floaty effect, like they move really slow through the air and you can kind of watch them fly through the air. It's very strange. And yeah, the game is pretty ugly for the most part, but I have to say, I miss this type of game. The type of game that you could easily beat in a week or a weekend with no RPG elements or skill trees or microtransactions or privacy agreements and 800 gigabyte installations when you put the disc in for the first time. But man, now that's just the era we live in, isn't it? So anyway, the next game that I played was Resistance 2, and Resistance 2 improves on a lot of things that I felt were a bit rough in the first game, as I mentioned. One thing that's immediately noticeable is the amount of color in the environments in this one. Also, the gunplay feels a lot better. Even though the bullets on some of the guns are a little bit floaty, it's still not as bad as the first game, and I'm starting to think that maybe in the first game that was kind of intentional, but I didn't really think it worked that well. There was a big delay between when you would shoot your gun and like when the bullets would hit the enemy. It was just very strange. I've never felt that in any other shooter before. But anyway, there are a lot more frame rate dips in this one, but I kind of forgive the game because there is just so much more detail and things happening in these levels, whereas the first game felt a bit bare bones in terms of level design and the set piece department. Resistance 2 also leans a bit more into the horror aspect. There's this level in particular that I'm thinking of where you're sneaking through this abandoned neighborhood full of these chimera egg sacs, and the first couple of times one of these lanky guys jumped out at me, I was pretty freaked out. I mean, it really caught me off guard. There's a lot more unique enemies as well and big boss fights in this game compared to Resistance 1, where I think there was only like one big alien boss that you fight and he showed up like in 3 different levels and did the exact same thing. You know, in Resistance 1, it was mostly just wave after wave of standard enemies, which got kind of stale after a while. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with the Resistance games, and I'm really looking forward to the third one after I finish up 2. I hope Sony brings this series back someday. I mean, it doesn't have to be a remake or anything, I would just love a sequel, but until then, I'll just be here with my PS3. So yeah guys, those are the games that I've been playing in 2024 so far. It's not a lot, but I've been trying to get better at just, focusing on one game at a time for the most part. Maybe I'll dabble in another game here and there. But those are the ones that I've really been sitting down and playing. So definitely feel free to let me know in the comments what you guys have been playing. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to try this year, now that I'm back in the States with all my collection and everything, I'm going to try to make Backlog Journal a frequent thing. I feel like I say that every Backlog Journal, but this is the year that I really want to try to do it. So anyways, guys, thanks again so much for watching. Hit me up in the comments, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to say, it's all good. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.